Hello class and happy Monday. My name is Ms. Thompson and today we are going to be talking about form and how you can utilize this concept in your classroom. So to start with, we are going to talk about what is form. So form is the overall structure of a musical composition. Today we'll be talking about the most basic forms that we see in most compositions and ways for your students to recognize form through some music examples. But before we do that, it's very important to understand what your students should already know before you move on to the big subject of form. So first, it's important to know what the melody is, which is the organized succession of musical tones. And within form, you also want to have a general idea of phrasing within that music. A phrase is a succession of tones consisting with key parts or units. It's like a full musical sentence or a complete musical thought. In addition to that, your students need to know what a variation is, which is a phrase that's altered in some way, but you can still hear the main idea or melody. And then you also need to know what theme is, which is a melodic idea, and this creates a larger whole. So your students will definitely want to have a large understanding of these main vocabulary words because you will be using them consistently as you are discussing form. So these are just things to keep in mind. Okay, so when we begin to try to understand form, there are some main ideas that you'll want to share with your students. First, it's recognizing that there's a main idea or theme throughout the composition, and usually it's in some sort of home key, a familiar melody, or a recurring thought. For clarity and understanding, this main idea will always be labeled as section A. And when a new song is introduced, or a new theme or melody is introduced and it's completely different from the main idea, or from section A, it's given a new label. If the section is brand new and has no similarities with section A, this will be titled as section B. If there is a new idea, but it's kind of similar to section A, we label this as A prime, if you can still hear that main melody or theme. Any new ideas that are introduced after section B and have no similarities between previous sections, they'll be labeled on through the alphabet. So you can have a section C and a section D. So this is why it's important to understand variation because this will be used later on when you are labeling your form. Sections can be repeated or varied in a number of ways, so they need to know the components of a home key and a familiar melody or phrase and understand what that variation is. So there are also several types of form that we see in music, especially for middle school and high school. And this is what we're going to be continuing on as we are introducing form to them. Now that they have a basic understanding of labeling, it's important to know that we will start small when we're labeling, so strophic form up to sonata form. And listening examples are really vital when it comes to understanding how form works and hearing where the form is placed. So we'll have strophic, binary, ternary, rondo, and sonata form. And these are going to be the most basic. We'll stick with these ones. There are other forms that you can discuss, but for now, we're sticking with this. Strophic is the most basic. It is where the melody is the same or almost always the same, except the ending might change. This can be labeled as AAA or A prime A, or so on. And a great example of this is Old MacDonald. And once again, examples are really essential to kind of pick up on where we are in the music. The next example is binary. So binary is where you have an A section and a new idea, which is labeled as section B. Binary means two. There are two musical ideas present. And a great example of this is Row, Row, Row Your Boat, or Three Blind Mice. The next form is ternary, where you have an A section, a B section, and then an A section again, or A prime. An example of this one is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Rondo form is where you're always returning to the main theme, which is what rondo means, to return. So you'll start with section A, and then you'll move to section B, then section A again, and when a new idea comes along, you'll label it as section C, and again you'll return. So this keeps happening. A very traditional / classical form is sonata form. This is labeled differently than the rest because there are different keys that are involved and the relationship is not as clear. So this is why we kind of focus on sonata and labeling it because it is a little bit different. In sonata, you'll hear an exposition, which is in a home key, and then it moves to a different key. So basically from the tonic key to the dominant key, so from do to so. And then you'll have the development where the melody will go kind of all over the place when it comes to key changes. It could go to another major key, it could go to minor. If you're starting off in major, it can go wherever it wants. It's not exactly a variation of the main theme, it's kind of on its own. And then you'll have recapitulation where it recaps or comes back to the main theme or key. In simplest terms, it's similar to ternary form or maybe rondo form, but there are definitely more key changes and it's not as distinct when it's changing around. So an example of this would be Beethoven's Sonata, Opus 14, number 2. And I have included links to some of these songs so that you guys can pull it up for your students and listen to some of these songs. They also kind of give an idea of where the keys are moving to and what the students can listen for as you're watching these recordings and listening further. So now that your students have a basic understanding of form, you can expand this lesson in several ways. You can have your students create a story. For example, if we're talking about sonata form, you can talk about your student maybe hears a sunny day while they're listening to the exposition, and then while the development is coming along and it gets a little rough, maybe it starts to get a little rainy outside. And then when the recapitulation comes and you go to the home key, maybe they go back inside or the sun comes back out. However they want to kind of experiment with telling a story to connect more with the music. You can also have the students color in the different sections of the form in the music that you either play for them or in the music that they already have. So you could make copies of that music and have them use different colors for each different section. You can also, of course, have them label the sections as they're listening to their music, especially when this comes around the first time and they are being introduced to a new song. You can just have them title it. I think this is section A, maybe this is an exposition, and then have your students explain why they labeled their music this way. Again, this is all to make connections for the students so that they have a better listening skills as they're going on throughout class, and they can create they're a little bit more of a connection to the songs and the music that they're playing. So really, this is all that I have. If you guys have any questions, of course, you can send me an email. Otherwise, hopefully you can utilize this in your classroom, and I will see you guys on Tuesday.